Officer at a city park.
And he goes, "Did you know that you two are trespassing? And that if this were my home, I'd be licensed to shoot you both."
The city is bringing in a neutral third party to investigate the claims. Plus,
we want change! We want change!
Students marched to demand change at the Peel District School Board after a series of racial incidents prompted a probe by the province. And some Toronto landlords are crying foul after the Blue Jays' first baseman and first base coach are accused of not paying thousands of dollars in rent. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. A Toronto bylaw officer is under investigation for an interaction at Centennial Park that's being described by the other people involved as racist. Two black women say the white officer racially profiled them and then threatened their lives. The city announced today it is bringing in a third-party investigator to look into this. As Chris Glover reports, part of the incident was recorded.
The gates are locked at Centennial Stadium, and you're not supposed to go inside here, but people often do. Yesterday morning, Deborah Ampong and Eva Amamensa say the gate was open when they arrived, and they joined several white strangers to work out on the field. When a bylaw officer showed up, the whole group scattered.
He looks at us, and me and my friend Deborah, he goes, "You know, you guys are trespassing right now, and if this was my home, I'd be licensed to shoot you both." So when he said that, I was like, this can't, like, I literally even blacked out. I was like, no, this is not happening to you right now. That already just tells me there's a racial attachment to that, especially what's going on in the world right now and in the U.S. You know, seeing people like me getting shot by people who are in authority.
After the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the world has been consumed with anti-black racism protests, calling for an end to police brutality towards black people.
You are racist, and I will make sure this goes every freaking where. You mess with the wrong black woman, the wrong one.
When the pair felt threatened and racially targeted, Amamensa started recording.
Then you have the audacity to say, because we're trespassing, you could shoot us? Are you crazy?
Again, I said no such thing.
Are you serious?
In the video, the officer denies threatening violence, later saying he was addressing the white soccer players anyway.
I believe I was addressing these people.
Was he talking to you? No, was he talking to you?
You can rewrite history any way you want.
But the soccer players say the officer was only focused on the black women, at first asking for their ID and then wanting to write down their license plate.
I was actually very happy that they stood there still. They were actually able to confirm that, because honestly, if they weren't there, it would have literally been our word against the officer, and he would have definitely denied it, because he was denying it when it happened. He was denying it the whole time.
Originally, the city's Municipal Licensing and Standards Division was investigating, but after criticism of city employees investigating city employees, the investigation will now be independent.
When you have deeply concerning allegations like that, you do everything you can to ensure that the public is satisfied you're having an objective, independent investigation, so there's no suggestion that people are investigating themselves.
The pair want the officer fired, but are at least grateful for the conversation this incident has sparked about the implicit and explicit racism they say they face regularly.
If this was a month ago, definitely, it would be a different conversation. We probably wouldn't even be having this conversation.
The City of Toronto will not comment on the employment status of this bylaw officer during the investigation, but every employee at this city is set to get anti-black racism training. And tonight, the mayor says that this example showcases the fact that people who deal with folks on the front line should get that training fast-tracked. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
In Brampton and Mississauga tonight, students and their parents took to the streets in a march to demand changes at the Peel District School Board after a series of racial incidents prompted a probe by the Education Ministry. Lauren Pelly has more.
It was a march for change. Students, parents, and community leaders all calling for an end to long documented racism in the Peel School Board.
I went to school in Peel Board from kindergarten all the way through grade 12, and I just feel like there was a lot of shadow over the black history and over black kids in general.
Students have been called the N-word by teachers. A lot of them have been
more or less scared to go to school.
Hundreds joined the crowd, walking 7 kilometers down Huron-Ontario Street to gather at the board's office.
Too many black students are steered in the wrong path.
For this father, it's a fight that's deeply personal.
My child was in the school board previously, and in his middle school he suffered horrific racial discrimination from students as from the teachers.
Kola Ilyamade says the abuse started when his son was 10 and lasted for 3 years.
There's no reason for teachers to treat, black children differently just because of the color of their skin.
But that's what advocates say has happened in the Peel Board for far too long. One third-party review found black students make up close to a quarter of suspensions, despite being only 10% of the secondary school population.
We see that black students in particular are streamed into lower classes from academic, it's so that they can't go to university.
Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the board has until next Monday to develop a plan to address those key concerns. Parents here today say they've waited long enough.
I'm really hoping that there's going to be sustainable actions moving forward. I just want my boys to have a chance, that's all.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Mississauga.
A 25-year-old woman is facing charges after a hit-and-run accident in Markham earlier this week that left a cyclist dead.
The victim was a 50-year-old man from the city of Markham. He was riding his bicycle that morning on Carlton Road when he was struck by that vehicle that failed to remain. He was thrown from the bicycle and was there lying at the side of the road for probably quite a bit of time before he was found by a passerby.
York police say the collision happened near Carlton Road and Old Ivy Lane Monday morning. Officers later found the cyclist with life-threatening injuries. He died in hospital. The woman initially fled the scene, but investigators found security video that showed her damaged car. The woman also had allegedly filed a false police report about a crash. The 25-year-old is facing charges including failure to stop at a collision causing death. 4 people were taken to hospital last night after a pair of wheels came off a truck on Highway 401, setting off a crash that included 5 vehicles. The truck was eastbound near McCowan Road in Scarborough when the wheels came off, one of them careening into the westbound lanes of the highway, striking a car. 4 other vehicles became involved in the resulting collision. Now, everyone is expected to be okay. The truck was later found off the highway in Pickering, and the driver was charged. Ontario's pandemic state of emergency has been extended until at least the end of the month, but for the 4th day in a row, the province is reporting fewer than 200 new cases of COVID-19. The province says today there were 190 new cases of the disease. It's also recorded 12 new COVID-19 deaths. Over 24,000 tests were processed yesterday. Now, according to the health minister, Ontario is now leading the country in daily testing. And MPPs passed new legislation in Queen's Park tonight to temporarily ban commercial evictions until the end of August. The government said it wanted to protect commercial tenants from being locked out or having their assets seized, all because of shutdowns caused by COVID-19. Now, this is retroactive to May 1st, which is a month earlier than the Progressive Conservatives had previously proposed. The opposition New Democrats had been calling for the measures to be retroactive to mid-March. A downtown condo landlord says a Toronto Blue Jays player is refusing to pay him thousands of dollars he owes in rent. Now, another landlord claims the Jays coach wants out of the rental contract he signed earlier in the year. The landlords say the 2 team members are citing the pandemic and the shuttered baseball season as the reason why. John Lancaster has the exclusive details.
First career slam for Rowdy Tellez.
25-year-old Rowdy Tellez has made a good living playing pro ball. More than $1 million so far with the Toronto Blue Jays. But COVID-19 has stalled the baseball season. Players are only getting a fraction of their salary, and Tellez is stuck in the U.S. His landlord says Tellez paid first and last month's rent in March when he signed this lease, agreeing to pay $4,100 a month for a Toronto condo steps from the Rogers Centre. But since then, he's refused to pay any more.
They can't really make the decision like Ryan Tellez, no play, no pay. That doesn't have anything to do with the landlord. The landlord rented out their property. I rented out my property to him in good faith.
Jay's first base coach, Mark Budzinski, is also claiming he shouldn't have to pay his rent. He signed a 6-month lease for $3,100 a month for a condo on Wellington Street West. He's paid 3 months' rent, but says the lack of a baseball season and a closed Canada-U.S. border should void his rental contract. Budzinski wants his landlord, Derek Thomas, to refund his rent payments.
You signed the lease agreement. It's a legal document. If you sign the legal document, you're supposed to honor your agreement.
Both landlords say they're out thousands of dollars in rent and still have to pay mortgages and maintenance fees on the empty properties. Pinizzato wrote to the Jays urging them to take control of their players and coaches to ensure they respect local landlords.
What are we teaching our kids if it's okay for a professional athlete to walk away from a contract because?
She says the team called her back, but the situation remains unresolved.
Both Tellez and Budzinski declined to speak with CBC News about this. So did the Jays. Meanwhile, Budzinski is asking Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board to cancel his lease. The lawyers we spoke to say claiming COVID-19 is enough to get someone out of a rental agreement may be a tall hill to climb. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Experts at Sick Kids Hospital are calling on the province to reopen Ontario schools in September. The hospital put out a study today with recommendations for reopening. They include increased protocols around hand hygiene and physical distancing, separating desks, and avoiding large gatherings. Now, the document is also calling for symptomatic students to stay home and get tested for COVID-19. Researchers at Sick Kids have been studying the effects of the pandemic on children. They believe keeping schools closed will have too great an impact on their physical and mental health.
A growing body of research tells us that a significant proportion of children have experienced increased depression, anxiety, irritability, and seem less able to buffer day-to-day frustration.
I think we are now at a point where we know it's going to be around for a long time, and the alternative of having children not in school for months and potentially a year or two are just untenable.
The Ford government says later this month it will announce its plans for reopening schools in September. It also says it continues to prepare for a number of different scenarios. Well, after the break, no school plus no gym class and no recess equals a failing grade for most kids when it comes to keeping active. We'll have details on that coming up. Plus,
well, some rain chances are getting closer to our area, not necessarily, though, into the GTA. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll show you exactly where and when this might be happening. That's all coming up after the break.
Time for a check on the weather forecast with meteorologist Colette Kennedy. And Colette, another gorgeous day out there, and it's just getting warmer from here.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, Mike. You know, we just put this on repeat, essentially, in terms of the sunshine. But yeah, the temperature's picking up a little bit each day. You know, we get to kind of ease ourselves into this. Same thing with the humidity. It's not too bad yet. Tomorrow's still not too bad with that humidity. It will start to change as we get towards the weekend, though, and then we'll start to see those humidex values getting closer towards 40. North of the GTA, too, I think by Friday afternoon, we're going to start to see some pop-up thunderstorms, but those are going to be north of the GTA. We're still not looking at rain in our neck of the woods, close to the water. And, you know, I do have a risk for Lake Erie, and I'm going to sort of show you for southwestern Ontario where that possibility is coming a little sooner there. These are our daytime highs today. Again, Ottawa, look at this, 30 degrees today, the hot spot here for our numbers for southwestern, eastern Ontario, and having a look at Windsor at 28 and Toronto at 27 unofficially. Showing you kind of a broader perspective here, just so you can see the range of this dome of high pressure protecting not just the lower Great Lakes, but all of the Great Lakes here. Everything kind of having to go around in terms of the precipitation. Some heavier rains, too, down by the Carolinas. In fact, some flooding concerns there because of this real blocking pattern in the atmosphere that's keeping the dry conditions in place here, but making some of those other atmospheric trends really sort of stay in place and holding the rain in place there. Now, watch what sort of happens as we go into Thursday. This starts to slide a little bit further north. Now, it's going to bring some of that humidity our way, or begin to. We get into a risk of seeing a few showers trying to make their way to the north of Lake Erie, then into Thursday, trying to push towards the Niagara region. I don't think they'll get there, but we could see a few pop-up showers there, again, into southwestern Ontario. Into Friday, I think we will see some showers, isolated storms popping up north of the GTA into cottage country, but it's likely not going to be for the rest of us until about Sunday night that we really see some showers coming back into other areas. Overnight tonight, 15 into southwestern Ontario for lows, highs tomorrow 30, and closer to the lakeshore, it is a little cooler. You can knock 4 to 5 degrees off. 12 to 13, even 14 for the overnight lows into the GTA. Tomorrow, getting closer to 30 for those daytime highs, and then Friday getting to 30 degrees, and then you can see into the weekend the temperatures, yeah, coming up on Saturday, but it's more important that the humidex values will be coming up. And of course, again, Saturday, first official day of summer. Mike.
And it is looking great. Thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
A new study from Participaction says that even before COVID-19 came around, less than half of children met the minimum daily requirement for physical activity. Now, there's concern that with the pandemic, that number is even worse. Greg Ross has more.
They're not the kind of marks a parent would ever want to see on their kid's report card, but it's especially bad because these grades can affect their health.
The overall physical activity grade is a D+ right now.
Mark Tremblay is the chief scientific officer behind the report card released by Participaction. It looks at kids aged 5 to 17 and includes information collected up until February of this year before the pandemic.
Best available evidence from Statistics Canada shows that 39% of kids are meeting the minimum physical activity target of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day.
But that number gets far worse when you include a couple of more key factors.
We add in screen time and we look at sleep behaviors, a combination of which is referred to as the 24-hour movement guidelines. We're getting a failing grade. Approximately 12 to 15% are meeting those just basic living guidelines.
Now throw in a pandemic, and Tremblay says that number drops to less than 3% of kids meeting basic standards.
And when you're inside, as you and I are right now, we move less. I mean, it's just fundamental. We sit more. We probably eat more than we need to. We don't get fresh air. We don't get the exposure to the sun, which is required for vitamin D.
Would you guys rather be exercising or playing on the computer?
Playing on the computer.
Megan Trewartha-Lettingham says she's taken it upon herself to motivate her 6-year-old twin daughters, Devin and Lachlan, to stay active. It doesn't hurt that Trewartha-Lettingham is also a personal trainer.
We might get out for a bike ride, we might get out for a big walk. There might be a picnic at the end of that at our final destination so that we can go a little further and it's more fun.
She says just like when kids are in school, she created a routine for her daughters while they're at home.
Incorporating something into a routine makes things easier, and once the kids are expecting to do that, there's less pushback.
Tremblay says more families need to get active because if they don't, there will be consequences.
I'm hoping that this is not the new normal for Canada. Otherwise, we're in, a generation from now, we're in very serious circumstances with accelerated chronic disease situations.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, 1 year later and still champions. We take a look back at the Raptors championship parade 1 year ago today after the break. It's been 1 year since millions filled the streets of downtown Toronto to celebrate the Toronto Raptors championship with that parade, a parade like we may never see again. Today, COVID-19 has those same streets empty. CBC Sports' Jacqueline Dury takes us down memory lane.
but it's already been 1 year since the Raptors championship parade when millions of fans flooded the streets of Toronto to celebrate the 2019 NBA champions. Now, it kind of goes without saying, but a lot's changed since then. And I'm not only talking about Kawhi no longer being a Raptor, I'm talking about the global pandemic. So let's go down the exact same route the Raptors took and relive some of those amazing moments, but also see how much has changed.
Take away from my one that I had before. It was crazy, but obviously it's a little different. You have a whole country behind you, and it's their first championship, and supposedly 2 million people out here. I don't think they can fit that in most cities.
The city is amazing. Look at the turnout, and we ain't even halfway there, and we've been on the boat or the bus for 2 hours.
Hey, coming to you live for the big city with the greatest in the world, the champions. We got one with the dip.
That was amazing.
Well, there you have it. What should have taken 2.5 hours ended up taking 4. Thousands of people were in Nathan Phillips Square to meet the team, and it was an amazing day to end an amazing season.
All the highlights there. What a great day. I never tire of seeing Drake drop the mic to Greg Ross there. Well, that's our newscast for tonight. Tomorrow on Metro Morning, we'll hear from the head of Sick Kids Hospital. We told you earlier in the newscast about that new study from the hospital calling for schools to reopen in September. We'll hear how things could be different, and that's tomorrow just after the 8 o'clock news on CBC Radio 1. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.